All right, so thank you, spasiba. Thank you for having me here in Saint Petersburg. It's actually the second time I'm in Russia only, the first time in Saint Petersburg. And it's a beautiful city, as far as I can tell so far. So let's talk about my favorite topic, which is software patents in Europe. Let me maybe start with telling you a little bit about what makes me competent to talk about this topic to you. So I'm a patent attorney. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a patent attorney, so half technical guy and only half legal guy. My technical background is computer science. And my firm, Bastian, has been quite active in the software field ever since. So I don't know if you've heard it in Germany. There has been a lot of patent litigation lately. We had the smartphone wars, for example, where basically my firm was representing Microsoft and Apple as well against the whole Android ecosystem, basically. Then the smartphone wars have somewhat settled right now. So right now the next litigation wave is more on the telecommunications back end, so the network providers. And the next litigation wave, which is already dawning at the horizon and which has already started actually, is about connected cars, autonomous driving. And I mean, cars are these days essentially smartphones on wheels. So I don't know if you've heard it, but Broadcom just sued BMW and Mercedes-Benz in Germany. So also this litigation wave is already starting. And all of those litigations involve to a great extent not hardware, not at all, but only software-based functions. And that's why this topic is so relevant. So my firm does quite a lot of litigation, as I told you, but we're a mixed firm of attorneys at law who do primarily the litigation side, the infringement, court proceedings, and the other half of the firm is patent attorneys like me who participate in the litigations but who deal with prosecution, so getting the patent applications granted before the patent offices. Let's see if that works. Yeah. So, who of you already has experience with the European patent system? Just raise your hand. Has anyone filed a European patent? Not many people. Then maybe it makes sense to tell you a little bit about the European patent system, maybe some figures to give you some context. So this chart shows the number of patent applications filed at the European Patent Office, steadily increasing. Last year we had roughly like 175,000 patent applications filed at the European Patent Office, which is quite a lot. I think the EPO has like 4,000 examiners, so they have quite something to do. The European Patent Office is also among the so-called IP5, the 5 biggest patent offices. And when I was preparing this talk, I was curious about the extent to which Russian companies file European patent applications. So I looked up this chart from the EPO, if the clicker works. Yeah. So this chart shows the top 50 countries of origin where European patent applications come from. And we have the usual suspects: the United States, #1, Germany, Japan, France, China, and so on. Now, can anyone spot Russia? I was quite... Oh, sorry, wrong button. I was quite impressed because Russia is only here, number 34. The Russian Federation has only filed, companies from the Russian Federation have only filed 229 patent applications last year out of the 175,000. And I'm wondering why is that? So apparently Russian companies don't really file European patents. In case it is because of a lack of understanding of the European patent system, I hope my presentation now helps you shed some light on that. One important thing to know is that the European Patent Convention, which is the legal text behind all that, is not about the EU, the European Union. That are two different things. The European Patent Convention is simply a multinational contract in which certain member states participate, and there are 38 member states to the European Patent Convention, including most of the European Union countries, but also including countries which are not part of the European Union, for example, Switzerland or Turkey. Those are part of the European patent system, although they are not part of the EU. So the advantage of the European patent system is that you have a single patent examination procedure. You have to file only a single application in one language, English, German or French, which is then dealt with by one patent examiner. And once you convince the patent examiner to grant a patent, you can get protection in all of those 38 countries with one patent application. Now, there is no such thing as a single enforceable European patent, but right now the system is like that when the European patent examiner grants the patent, it kind of explodes into a bundle of national patents. So once the patent examiner allows your patent application, you can then select in which countries you want to validate that patent, and this then results, for example, in a German patent, in a French patent, in a UK patent. And if you want to enforce your patents, that has to be done then on a national level. Now in Europe, the most popular litigation venue is Germany. Most of the patent litigation cases are filed in Germany. And also the litigation defendant then probably will attack the validity of your patent. Also that has to be done on the national level. So a defendant also has to kill, so to say, each and every national part of the European patent. Now that will change probably with the unitary patent and the Unified Patent Court. You might have heard of that. Whole different story. I won't get into much details. It's in the planning for many years. It was almost finished. It was about to come into force. Then we had Brexit and some other obstacles. And yeah, basically right now no one really knows when the Unified Patent will come. So we are still have this system which I told you, one prosecution before the European Patent Office and then national patents in the end. So that's basically a brief rundown of the European patent system. If you have any questions in the meantime, we can do this interactively, no problem. So if you have any questions, just raise your hand and interrupt me. Also in case I tell you something that is completely uninteresting maybe. So, European patents for software, that's the basic questions. Are there patents for software at the European Patent Office? And the answer is, typical attorney answer, well, it depends. Yes, there are patents for software if there's an inventive technical contribution to the prior art. That's really the bottom line. If you can only remember one thing from my presentation, that's it. You can get a European patent on software if the software does something technical in a non-obvious manner, in an inventive manner. If we look a bit in more detail into the legal framework, there are basically two hurdles to software patentability. The first hurdle is patent eligibility. So that's an absolute hurdle, no comparison with the prior art, with existing things at that point, but it's an absolute hurdle. And here, this is basically a very coarse filter to filter out inventions that are purely abstract, purely conceptual, so pure business methods, mathematical methods, scientific theories, things like that. Things that are purely non-technical, those are filtered out here at the patent eligibility hurdle. But in practice, it's really a non-issue because you overcome this patent eligibility hurdle if there is a single technical feature in your claim. And that feature can be trivial. So as soon as you have, for example, a computer in your patent claim, which is always the case because any software is executed on a computer, you overcome this patent eligibility hurdle. The challenging test is then the second hurdle, and that is then the typical hurdles, novelty and inventive step. You compare the invention to the prior art, and here the decisive thing is that when assessing inventive step, obviousness, only the technical features of the invention are looked at. So what a patent examiner typically does is he will take your patent claim or the features, He will compare it with the closest prior art, something which already exists. He will figure out which features are already known in the prior art and which are the real novel features. And concerning those novel features, he will make an assessment for each novel feature. Is it technical or not? And if it's not technical, it is simply disregarded in the inventive step assessment. So only the technical novel features can establish inventive step. Only those enter the obviousness assessment. Now, maybe a brief comparison with another jurisdiction, the US jurisdiction. I think it's, to some extent, it's the other way around. So if you are familiar with the US approach, there is lots of discussions about patent eligibility. There was a couple of years ago this Alice decision, which opened up the box completely new. And right now it's quite hard to predict whether something will be considered patent eligible or not. There's not a really settled approach here, but we will have to wait about the case law developing. So the decisive hurdle at the US PTO is patent eligibility, and once you pass that hurdle, which is quite difficult right now, inventive step is about the invention as a whole. So here the whole invention is looked at, and that's quite the other way around that in the EPC, as I just told you. At the EPC, patent eligibility is a non-issue. A single technical feature is enough, for example, a computer. And then in inventive step, that's the real hurdle. Only the technical part of the invention, is looked at. So now you might ask yourself, I'm talking about technical all the time, so what is then, the clicker somehow doesn't work. What is technical? And well, here gets a little bit complicated because there is no, let's say, there is no exhaustive definition of the term technical in the law. What we have in the law is only a short list of things that are considered non-technical: mathematical methods, scientific theories, the presentation of information, computer programs also. Those things are considered non-technical, but they are only excluded from patentability if they are claimed as such. So that's quite difficult to understand from the legal text, and frankly I really cannot understand it alone from the legal text. But the boards of appeal of the European Patent Office have established quite a reasonable approach how to deal with that, and that was what I just told you, namely inventive step, and there only the technical features are taken into account. So if we look at individual specific cases, in many cases it is quite easy to determine whether something is technical or not. So if we look at the far ends of this scale I was trying to draw here, so if we have, for example, embedded control software, that's clearly software that achieves a technical effect, does something technical. If it's embedded, if it controls, I don't know, the manufacturing plant or something like that, that's clearly technical software, and that is then patentable. On the other right end of the spectrum, we would have something like a pure business method, I don't know, a method of selling products in a certain way, implemented on a computer. If that's the only technical feature, that won't get you a patent, because the majority of the claim will be directed to this business method, which is non-technical and which doesn't count for inventive steps. So that is an example of a non-technical method. And I mean, it gets interesting, of course, right in the middle, where there are a number of cases where it's really not so easy to say, should this be patentable or not? So in the end, as I said, there is no legal definition of the term technical. What it comes down to is you have to know the case law. So in the European patent system, there's the first instance, the patent examiners, right? If a patent examiner rejects your patent application, you can file an appeal, and the appeal is then dealt with by the boards of appeal, which is a separate entity, separate from the patent office. Those are more like judges. They only deal with appeals, and they then check the first instance decision and render an own decision. And this then creates case law. They really decide on the individual aspects in the appeal case, and those appeal cases are then published, and that's what you need to know. You just have to know the old cases and have to see, well, there is a similar case and this one was decided so and so, technical or not, and then you have to draw analogies for your case. So I think the best way for you to get a feeling of how the boards of appeal deal with software inventions is just to go through examples. And I have 6 examples here which I would like to show you to give you a feeling of what is now technical or not. Is it only tools or is it also something else? So the first example, that's maybe an easy one. So maybe let's do a little quiz here. So that's the patent claim. All of those examples are real cases, but the patent claims are a little bit abstracted by me, so it's a little, to make it easy to understand. Most of the time a patent claim is more comprehensive and more complicated. So this one is about an anti-lock braking system configured for detecting lateral strain on each wheel, monitoring if a threshold is exceeded, and selectively adjusting brake fluid pressure to each wheel. So implemented in some kind of control algorithm in software, probably, so it's a software patent. So what would you say? Is this, let's go through these 2 hurdles. Is it patent eligible? Who says yes? Raise your hand. Who says no? Okay, the rest is unsure. So this is clearly patent eligible because, as I told you, the patent eligibility hurdle requires only a single technical feature in your claim, and it might be a trivial feature. And I mean, here we have a braking system, which is a physical system, so this is clearly patent eligible. Now the second hurdle is then inventive step. Now we don't have time to assess the prior art right now to see if it's really non-obvious and inventive, but we can try to figure out whether the features of those claims, the 3 features, whether those contribute to the technical character, whether those are technical features. And what would you say here? I mean, detecting strain on a wheel, monitoring a threshold, and adjusting brake fluid pressure on a wheel. Are those technical features? Yes, raise your hand. Yeah, people nodding. Yeah, exactly. So in this case, all of the features contribute to the technical character because they achieve a technical effect. They solve a technical problem. That's always the control question you might ask. So all of those features have to be looked at when comparing the invention to the prior art. Now here's another example. A method of sorting a list of numbers comprising finding the smallest number, swapping the smallest number to the top of the list, and repeating steps A and B for the remainder of the list. So that's basically a sorting algorithm. I think it's called selection sort if you're into computer science a little bit. So should that be patent eligible? Who says yes? Oh, people shaking their heads. You would say yes, should be patent eligible? Sorry, no, it's not, because if you look at that claim, it doesn't have any technical feature in it. It's just a method of sorting a list of numbers and operating in features A, B, and C on those numbers. It can be done completely in the mind, in the human mind. It doesn't require any computer or any technical features. So this claim would not be patent eligible. That's one of the rare cases which would fail on the first hurdle. Now, what if we say the same invention and we say it's a computer implemented method of sorting a list of numbers and the same features, you might already guess it, that's then patent eligible because of only the presence of this word computer in the claim. That makes the claim patent eligible. Now, does it provide a technical contribution for inventive step? What would you say? Which of the features are technical and which are not? Well, the only feature in that claim is the computer, in computer implemented. The rest, sorting numbers, finding the smallest numbers, swapping the number to the top, and so on, are purely abstract mathematical concepts. No technology involved here. So what happens then is that the examiner just strikes out all of those features and assesses only the remaining technical features compared to the prior art. And I mean, the decision will then be implementing this as such excluded method on a computer. That's the only technical thing. That's obvious. And the invention will not be granted a patent because it's obvious. So those are kind of extreme examples. The brake control system is clearly technical. Sorting numbers as such is clearly non-technical. Let's move a bit into the middle of the scale. So we have a hard monitoring apparatus comprising. So that's basically a cardiac pacemaker. I hope no one had a heart attack yet, so if you had, you probably have one of those pacemakers. It has a sensor for receiving an electrocardiograph signal from a patient, means for pre-processing the signal to suppress noise, and a neural network for identifying irregular heartbeats. So this is really an artificial intelligence invention. It uses a neural network, some kind of machine learning, fancy stuff like that. So should that be patent eligible? Yes, people nodding. Of course, because it has an apparatus in it, and that's a technical feature. And which of the features contribute to the technical character for the second hurdle? All of them, because, well, it's a sensor, which is a physical thing. It receives signals from a patient that represent the heartbeat, so to say. And yeah, the neural network, that's important to know. The neural network, the last feature. A neural network would in itself be only an abstract data structure. That would not be a technical feature. But this is a neural network which is specifically designed for identifying irregular heartbeats. And if you limit, as in this claim, the neural network to this purpose, which is a technical purpose, identifying irregular heartbeats, then this neural network also becomes technical. So here we have all features contributing to the technical character of the invention. Now it gets more interesting maybe. So we have spam classification, basically a spam filter. It's a method of classifying emails depending on their content, performed by a computer program. And the steps are applying a probabilistic classifier to calculate a probability that the email is spam, wherein the classifier has been trained on past classifications of email content. So that's also an AI example, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and what it does is it looks at your incoming emails in your inbox and classifies them into spam or not, based on this probabilistic classifier which has been trained on past emails. Patent eligible? Yes or no? Yes, because it's performed by a computer program executing on a computer. That's a technical feature. And now the question is, are those algorithmic features applying that probabilistic classifier to calculate the probability that the email is spam and that the classifier has been trained? Are those technical features? You're shaking your head? You're right, they are not. Because this is actually a patent application from Microsoft. We also have people from Microsoft here, I think. So, so sorry, didn't fly in that case. What the Board of Appeals said in that case was that classifying emails depending on their content, and that's what the invention does here, depending on the text inside the email, to check whether the text of the email, the content, is really valuable to the user or whether it is spam. That's a non-technical differentiation, because the question whether an email is wanted by the user or not, so that it is spam, that's a non-technical issue. Would have been different maybe if the emails would have been classified based on a technical characteristic, maybe, I don't know, the size of an email attachment or something. That would have been maybe a technical characteristic, the storage size. 2 minutes, okay. Then let's skip this one and come to an interesting case. This is then the last example, a computer implemented method for simulating pedestrian crowd movement. So in this case, the invention was about having a model of, for example, a building.
There is a problem with the sound to my headset. If the technician is here, can he help me? The sound is not going properly to my ears.
I'm sorry. Should I proceed nevertheless? I hope you understand my English talking. Yeah, okay. So this was about having a mathematical model of a building, for example, a railway station, for example, and a model of how people move in such an environment. And then the method would simulate how a crowd of pedestrians would move through the railway station, for example. And then you could derive insights such as, in case of an emergency, whether people could be evacuated fast enough and things like that. So Question, is it patent eligible? Yes, because it's a computer implemented method. And now the interesting question, do those algorithmic features, do those contribute to the technical character? No one really knows. And the thing is, no one really knows, because this is an interesting case, because it was an appeal case, and the appellant said that, well, there was an earlier decision which was about simulating an electronic circuit and the current flow in that circuit, and this one was considered technical. Now, the appellant said, well, this invention is quite similar because it's about simulating an environment, such as a railroad station, which is also a technical thing. And he also said that people moving through that environment also follows on a macro level kind of physical constraints, because, for example, a human being cannot move through a wall and things like that. So he said that it's quite similar to this current circuit simulation case, and therefore this one should also be patentable and technical. So the Board of Appeal here was not so sure, because they said, well, yes, it's somewhat similar to this older case, but they really questioned the older case as such. They said that, well, only simulating a hypothetical system here, because that doesn't need to be a real railroad station. It can be just a model of a hypothetical railroad station. This claim also covers, for example, simulating movement of people through an online game, for example, which is purely, it's not real. So they said, no, we don't agree with that earlier approach, and therefore what they did here, the Board of Appeal, is they referred some questions to the enlarged Board of Appeal, which is the highest judicial entity of the European patent system, to answer that question, basically, if simulation methods which only operate on a simulated model of a real-world entity, but not on the real-world entity itself, whether that should be technical or not, and we don't know. The enlarged Board of Appeal will have to decide that, and this decision will have tremendous impact on a whole industry branch, the whole simulation methods branch. So, bottom line, what you need to know, the legal framework at the European patent system is quite stable. Patent eligibility, non-issue. The decisive question is always inventive step, where only the technical part of the invention is looked at, and the question, what is technical or not, is then always a question of the individual case, and you have to know basically old cases to draw analogies for your case. Now, to help you with that, what we did, my team and I at my firm, is we set up a little website called bardele.com. That's my firm / European Software Patents. You might wanna visit that website. It's some kind of a wiki where our mission is to provide actionable summaries of virtually all Board of Appeal decisions that concern European software patents. Currently, we're adding a new entry every Tuesday and Thursday, so check it out. I hope it's helpful. Okay, that's all from my side. Thank you. Spasiba.